Oh my God, is this thing really 4 chapters now? I mean, I tend to think that trilogies are stronger, but sometimes you got to tell the story the way the story has to be told. So if you've stuck around this long for 4 chapters of how I constructed my proton pack for the year 2012, give yourself a big hand and a big foot. Okay? So, when last we left, I had dropped off the aluminum at the high school. Now, the welding instructor, Mr. Ashley, told me that with their TIG setup, there was no way for them to weld the booster plug inside the booster. I had to come up with a different method of doing this. Coincidentally, I had already doodled this sketch of a possible way of doing it. So I took the 2 pieces of aluminum with me to Lowe's, and I just kept trying them out, sliding them in and out of different pieces of PVC until I found things that would nestle inside of each other really, really snugly. I used epoxy putty again, big surprise, to fill the end of the booster plug, and then I sanded it smooth. The same screw holes that keep the booster attached to the shell would also go through the booster and into this new unit holding the booster plug in place. I primed it, and I painted it barbecue black. Now you can see from these next 2 photos that I use a 2-stage paint application for things. I'll paint one end of it, and then I'll allow that to dry, then I'll paint the other end of it. I even went so far as to paint these 3 pieces separately, which was a mistake. I should have just jammed them together and then painted them as a unit. It was really hard to get them to slide into each other with the added thicknesses of the paint. During their reassembly, I realized there was a little too much wiggle on the plug, so I added 1 more screw through this innermost collar and down into the metal shaft of the plug. I had to countersink it to get it to not be protruding against the side of the outer booster. For the final touch-up coat of paint, I did put the booster plug inside the booster and I painted them all together. It looked really good. I don't have a good photo here showing it from the proper angle, but you couldn't even see that area where I'd had to epoxy putty the side of the booster itself, and that was still going to be hid behind the ion arm. Now, while I was at Lowe's that day buying the PVC, I did go ahead and buy some other things that I was going to need for the Proton Pack, including this spade bit. And I used that to cut the holes where the ribbon cable was going to go and where other tubes and hoses were going to plug in as well. Hey, wouldn't this make an amazing design for a Ghostbusters fan's house? I mean, just imagine that scaled up. Anyway, as you can see, I cut the mouse hole too high, and that had to be fixed with epoxy putty, and then sanded back smooth. So the shell itself was looking pretty good, and wait, holy crap, I haven't done any more work on the thrower in months. So here you see all the parts to the thrower that I had assembled so far, including the 2 newest acquisitions from GB Fan Shop, the aluminum trigger tip and the clear acrylic rod with frosting. They wouldn't quite fit together on the first time that I tried to test fit them, but Vinny gave me some great advice, and I'm going to try to quote it as verbatim as I can. He said to take a piece of sandpaper, wrap it around my finger, and sand the inside of the trigger tip until it would fit snugly over the acrylic rod. He said you don't want them to start off too loose to begin with, so it's actually better for them to be too tight at the very beginning. Another thing I needed to purchase at Lowe's, inside these resin gun ears, you'll see a very short white cylinder. It was a particular diameter of white PVC tube. Unfortunately, to get just those couple of inches that I needed of that particular diameter, at my Lowe's, I had to buy a 10-foot section. But hey, it was just a couple of bucks. Okay, so it was a little cumbersome to get home, but thankfully, I live so close that between Lowe's parking lot and my driveway, there's not a single stoplight. And now here's a quick montage of things on the gun that needed to be drilled and tapped. I was constantly double-checking against TC's tutorial with GEKX's screws and changing out my bits and my taps. I added the fake weld with epoxy putty. And I also puttied into place some 6/32 hex nuts because I felt like the screws were just powdering the resin. I'm going to wait and do some more research before I commit myself to any one particular brand of lights and sound for the pack. So, for the meantime, I bought this $7 set of poster lights at Target. Back over to the pack, I got everything assembled and the ribbon cable attached through its hole for the very first time. I did use the Spengler method of screwing it in, which required 1 additional screw from GEKX. And then I used some cable ties to cinch it all down on the inside very, very securely. That section of PVC that got cut down from 10 foot to a couple of inches was painted silver, and then these other pieces were painted with the primer gray and then the barbecue black. October 25th, less than a week to go. Why am I taking an entire day off to go to Tupelo, Mississippi with Brandon and his Ecto to see a Ghostbusters quote along on the big screen? Yeah, I'm going to do that. So I didn't get any more work done on the thrower, but I did wear the backpack by itself. The next day I went to the high school to see what all they had finished. They only had the HGA and the vacuum tube. I gave them both a little bit of sanding and did some tapping on the HGA and then gave them both a coat of paint and got them assembled to the pack. I'd had this red tubing from among the very first things that I bought. I could finally cut it and put it into place. With all the holes drilled, it was finally time to prime the thrower. I did it in sections, and then while it was drying, I went to Lowe's to get washers to make a shock mount. I actually had to do some experimentation and made 3 trips to get this thing to be the right height right width, everything. Then it was time to paint the thrower with barbecue black, again in pieces, assembling it afterwards, and then I buffed the thing. When all the trim pieces were finally assembled, this thing felt great in my hands. But you know, in hindsight, I really think I should have painted it first, then drilled it, tapped it, and then put the screws in one time only. Since I hadn't ordered lights, I also hadn't ordered lenses. I needed to find some red translucent plastic, and these $1 cake servers from Walmart fit the bill nicely. I also had some 2 for $2 flashlights already on hand, so I took them apart and cannibalized them for their reflectors. I dremeled the cake servers down into little trapezoids, and then I hot glued everything into place. Someday when I get real lights and real lenses, hopefully the hot glue will make it easier to remove these. Monday, October 29th, 2 days until Halloween. I went back to the high school and was delighted to find that Mason had finished the last 4 pieces all in the remaining class hour on Friday. Forgive me for not documenting these last few steps better, but there was so much left to do. Hey, look, my resistors are finally attached to an ion arm for real. I plugged in the movie Teen Wolf, and then I wound up watching Teen Wolf 2 as well, while I was so busy sanding, and then tapping, and then painting, and then buffing, and then assembling. I got the V-hook attached, and then I took these lights, battery-operated red blinking lights that I had cannibalized from a Books A Million standee 15 years ago, and I put them in place in the cyclotron. I turned them on, and it was going the wrong direction. I was about to rip them all out when suddenly a part of my brain goes, no, just reverse 2 and 4. And sure enough, I had reversed the particle flow through the gate. And then this beautiful moment snuck up on me. I turned around, and there was nothing left to attach. Oh, I mean, it's not finished, as you can tell. There's no labels. The bumper, which was on order, still hadn't arrived, so I couldn't put on the shock mount, but aside from the shock mount, every item that I had in the house, which had for so long been all these separate pieces, were now assembled onto this one recognizable thing. It was a proton pack. This is how it looked on October the 30th, 2012. I always say, I work better with a deadline. I posted a photo of it online, and all my Ghostbusters friends were asking questions and making very positive comments about how good it looked. And Brock wanted to know how much did it weigh, so I didn't have a scale at home, but the next day I was going to my parents' house with my kids. I got on their scale, both with and without the proton pack, and the difference was exactly 25 pounds, while the boots, the belt, and the flight suit are an additional 10 pounds. Then I came home and found this box on my doorstep. Yes, on Halloween, I got my bumper from Vinky. As I said when my Mattel Ghost Trap arrived a year to the day before, talk about cutting the Minoc close to the hull. I even gave it a coat of paint, but there just wasn't enough time to get it attached. So, Halloween night, trick-or-treating with my kids, this is how I looked. True, the pack wasn't technically complete, but no one that I saw realized that fact. And with an additional 35 pounds of weight, this was the route that I walked for the very first time in full kit. When I met up with Brandon and his in-laws, I asked if I could use their restroom. I had to take the pack off to fit in their hallway. On November 2nd, I attached the bumper. To get it centered, I put in one screw on the right side, one screw on the left side, the second screw on the right side, the second screw on the left side. I still haven't gotten any of the hardware that I need to attach my shock mount, so this is how it looks now. So, thank you for watching all the chapters of making this video. I guess there's really nothing left to what? You want to see the proton pack on video with the lights blinking, me wearing it. Alright. See what I can do. Damn it! So, this is what my proton pack looks like. As you can see, I've got the blinking dead lights in there. They're controlled by 2 AA batteries. Also got these lights in the gun, and they're just controlled by 2 other AA batteries. So, still needs a lot of details. For instance, I used up every bit of gold spray paint that I had as set dressing for the play that I was directing, Little Shop of Horrors. So I have yet to spray paint these to be brassy colored or gold colored. And until they're painted, I haven't attached the other piece of little red plastic there. I'm still on a LC2 kidney pad and waist strap at the moment that will eventually need to be replaced. And I don't have the shock mount attached yet, as you can see, or labeled or any of that kind of stuff. So, and only twice so far have I successfully reholstered this thing while wearing it without assistance. See if I can do that right now. Haha! That's 3! The prop that I enjoyed making was my fed meter. I did another video about this. This is actually designed by Ernie Hudson. Inside the battery cover there. And I've got some other parts already lined up to do additional things to this. Notice the fuse on the injectors are not there yet. I wanted to add the hose bar. The injector provided some more hose bars. Found this at a thrift store the other day. It's one of these flexible lamp things. And I'm really thinking about gutting it and taking the internal part out and putting it on the tube that goes into the vacuum tube from the crank generator. Because I don't like the fact that it kind of sits up in the air. I was hoping to make it more malleable. I don't know, it may work, it may not work. So this is the way my Proton Pack looks in November of 2012. It's almost Thanksgiving. We'll be in a couple of days. And, you know, this year I'm thankful to the friends that I had that gave me fantastic advice and even provided parts for my Proton Pack. And I'm thankful to the guy in me, the 14-year-old kid in me that said, I want one of those someday. That kept pushing me forward to learn new skills and overcome obstacles and get this thing made. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everyone out there that's giving me positive comments about things like this. And you make it a lot easier to overcome some of the things when you go, why am I doing this? Oh yeah, that's why I'm doing it. So thank you for watching.